After supporting my partner through grad school, I heard him call me his personal assistant with benefits. So I removed my name from our accounts and my income. From his loan deferment, looking back now, I should have seen the red flags from day one. But you know how it goes. You're wearing those rose-colored Ray-Bans and everything just looks peachy keen. I met Derek at my cousin's wedding 5 years ago. He was this tall drink of water with an amazing smile and that confidence you can't fake. We hit it off right away, trading stories over some questionable wedding punch that definitely had more than just 7-Up in it. By the end of the night, I was smitten, head over heels for this dude who talked about wanting to change the world with his business ideas. Fast forward 6 months, we're practically joined at the hip. I had a decent job at a marketing firm. Nothing fancy, but it paid the bills and then some. Derek was working at this startup that was totally about to blow up, according to him. Spoiler alert, it didn't. When the company folded, he wasn't even that upset. Just shrugged those broad shoulders and said, "This is a sign I should go back to school, get my MBA." I thought it was cute how ambitious he was. My dad always said education is the one thing nobody can take away from you, so I was all for it. Derek got accepted into this prestigious program, and man, you should have seen how excited he was, like a kid on Christmas morning unwrapping a PlayStation 5. "Babe, this is gonna change everything for us," he kept saying. 2 years from now, we'll be set. The catch? Tuition was no joke. Like seriously the kind of numbers that make your eyes water. But I believed in him. In us. So I picked up extra projects at work, then a second job doing social media management on weekends. My Hyundai's odometer was spinning like a slot machine with all the driving between gigs. We moved into a smaller apartment to save cash. I started cooking at home instead of our Friday night Chili's tradition. No more spontaneous Target runs or splurging on those fancy cold brews from the hipster joint down the street. It was all Folgers from the Mr. Coffee machine and whatever was on sale at Kroger. Derek was busy with classes and networking events, which I totally got. MBA programs are intense, no cap. Sometimes I'd be so exhausted from working that I'd fall asleep on the couch waiting for him to come home. He'd wake me up with a gentle nudge and a, "You didn't have to wait up," but I wanted to hear about his day, even if my eyes could barely stay open. 2 years flew by like that. Me working myself to the bone, him studying and schmoozing with professors and classmates. Our relationship took a back seat, but I kept telling myself it was temporary. The light at the end of the tunnel was getting closer. Update. Hey Reddit, I'm blown away by all your comments and support. I never expected this post to blow up like it did. Some of you are asking if there were signs I missed along the way, and honestly, yeah, there were. But isn't hindsight always crystal clear? The way he started treating our apartment like a hotel, coming and going without a word. Should I have confronted him sooner? Graduation day finally arrived. I took the day off work, both jobs, and spent way too much at Sephora getting all dolled up. I even splurged on a new dress from Nordstrom Rack that made me feel like $1,000,000. This was our moment. The payoff for all those late nights, all those extra shifts, all those ramen dinners. The ceremony was beautiful. Seeing Derek walk across that stage in his cap and gown, I felt this surge of pride that nearly knocked me over. That's my man, I thought. Look what we accomplished. After the ceremony, his department hosted this fancy reception at some country. Club, open bar, fancy hors d'oeuvres, the whole 9 yards. I didn't know many people there, so I offered to grab drinks while Derek caught up with his classmates. That's when it happened. I was walking back with 2 glasses of champagne, navigating through clusters of people in formal wear, when I heard Derek's laugh. You know how you can pick out your person's laugh in a crowded room? I automatically smiled and headed toward the sound. "So what's your plan now that we're done with this torture?" some guy was asking him. "Taking a few weeks to chill before starting at Deloitte," Derek replied. I felt another wave of pride. He'd landed that job 2 months ago, and it was exactly what he'd been working toward. "What about the girlfriend? She coming to the city with you?" another classmate asked. There was this tiny pause that, in retrospect, spoke volumes. "Yeah, she's here somewhere," Derek said, and I could hear the dismissive tone. "Probably getting me a drink." They all chuckled, and I slowed my approach, suddenly feeling like I was eavesdropping. "Must be nice having someone bankroll you through." "This program," the first guy said with a smirk in his voice. "Yeah, she's basically my personal assistant with benefits. Kind of embarrassing, honestly," Derek replied, and they all laughed like it was the funniest joke ever. I froze mid-step. The champagne in my hands suddenly felt heavy. The noise of the party faded to a dull roar in my ears. Was that how he saw me? As some glorified servant he was embarrassed by? 5 years, 60-hour work weeks, putting my own career advancement on hold, all for someone who reduced me to a punchline for his buddies. I set the champagne glasses down on a nearby table and walked straight to the restroom, locked myself in a stall and just breathed. No crying. I was too shocked for tears. It was like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over my head, washing away years of delusion in one freezing moment of clarity. When I came out, I plastered on a smile that would have made my high school drama teacher proud. I found Derek and played the part of the proud, supportive girlfriend for the rest of the evening. He didn't even notice anything was wrong, too busy basking in his achievement, an achievement that was as much mine as it was his, though he'd clearly forgotten that part. That night, while he slept off the champagne, I opened my laptop and got to work. First, I transferred my portion of our savings to a new account at a different bank. We weren't married, thankfully, so legally that money was mine. Then I removed my name from our joint checking account. The next part required some digging, but I found the paperwork for his income-based loan deferment. See, Derek had been able to defer a large portion of his loan payments because on paper, with my income combined with his, which was basically zero during school, we still qualified. As low income for the expensive city we lived in, my name and income were listed as supporting him, which had reduced his monthly payments to practically nothing during school. I filled out the forms to remove myself as his financial support. Without my income in the equation, his loans would immediately enter full repayment. And with the amount he'd borrowed for his fancy MBA, those payments would be astronomical. I didn't leave right away. Call me petty, but I wanted to see his face when it all hit the fan. It took exactly 2 weeks for the loan servicer to process my paperwork and send him the updated payment information. I was making dinner, spaghetti, his favorite, when he burst into the apartment, face ashen, clutching a bunch of papers. "There's been some mistake," he stammered, shoving the papers at me. "They're saying I owe $3,500 a month, starting now." I wiped my hands on a dish towel and pretended to look at the paperwork. "That sounds about right," I said calmly. "That's what the loans cost without my income offsetting them." He stared at me like I was speaking Klingon. "What do you mean? What did you do?" "I removed myself as your financial support," I explained, turning back to stir the pasta sauce. "I also took my name off our joint accounts and moved my money elsewhere." "You what? Why would you do that?" His voice was rising now, panic setting in. I turned off the stove and faced him. "Because I'm not your personal assistant with benefits, Derek, and I'm definitely not embarrassing." Update 2. Thank you all for the gold and awards. This community is amazing. To address some questions, yes, I did transfer all my money, not our money, everything I'd earned and saved. A few of you asked about the apartment situation. We were both on the lease, but I had a plan for that too. Was I being cold-blooded or just finally standing up for myself? And what about his reaction when he realized I'd heard what he said at the party? The look on his face, I wish I could have framed it. First confusion, then realization, then this desperate attempt to backpedal. "That was just guy talk," he sputtered. "I didn't mean it. I was just trying to sound cool to those idiots." "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" I asked. "That you'd throw me under the bus to impress people you don't even respect?" He tried every angle after that, apologizing profusely, saying he'd been drinking, claiming he'd actually said something different and I'd misheard. When none of that worked, he switched to anger. "You can't just pull the rug out from under me. Like this, I'm about to start a new job. I need time to adjust." "You've had 2 years of me supporting you," I replied. "Your adjustment period is over." "We're supposed to be a team," he shouted, getting right up in my face. "Teams don't have MVPs and water boys, Derek. They have equal players." That night, I slept at my friend Amber's place. She'd been telling me for months that Derek was taking advantage, but you know how it is when you're in deep. You don't want to hear it. Now I was all ears, and she was kind enough not to hit me with, "I told you so." Over the next few days, Derek's texts evolved from angry, "You've ruined everything," to manipulative, "I don't know how I'll make rent this month," to desperate, "Please help me, I'm drowning in debt." I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I was busy apartment hunting and getting my ducks in a row. I found a studio I could afford on my own. Nothing fancy, but it had great natural light and was closer to my main job. I gave notice at my weekend gig. With only myself to support, I didn't need the extra income killing my Saturdays and Sundays. The day I moved out was surreal. Derek was at a training for his new job, so I had the place to myself. 5 years together, and everything I truly cared about fit into the back of my Hyundai and a small U-Haul trailer. I left my key on the kitchen counter, along with a check for my half of the rent for the remaining 2 months on our lease. I wasn't about to leave him completely high and dry or risk my own credit score. As I was doing my final walkthrough, making sure I hadn't forgotten anything, I found myself in front of the refrigerator. There was this photo of us from 3 years ago, stuck on with a magnet from our weekend trip to Nashville. We looked so happy, my head on his shoulder, his arm around my waist, the sunset turning everything golden. For a split second, doubt crept in. Was I overreacting? Throwing away years over one stupid comment? Then I remembered his face when he said those words. Not a trace of discomfort or hesitation, just smugness and a kind of ownership that made my skin crawl in retrospect. That wasn't a slip of the tongue. That was his truth coming out when he thought I couldn't hear. I took the photo down, folded it, and left it on the counter next to my key. Then I walked out, closing the door firmly behind me. That first night in my new place was strange. So quiet without Derek's constant podcast noise in the background. So empty without his stuff everywhere. But also peaceful. I ordered a pizza from Domino's, cracked open a Bud Light, and sat on my one piece of real furniture, a secondhand IKEA armchair, feeling lighter than I had in years. Derek figured out where I was working pretty quick, but security had been briefed and never let him pass the lobby. His texts eventually slowed from hourly to daily to weekly. Last I heard through mutual friends, he'd taken a roommate to afford his place, and was dating some college senior he'd met at a bar. Me? I got a promotion at work. Turns out when you're not exhausted from working 2 jobs, you actually have energy to excel at one. I started hiking on weekends with a group I found on Meetup, reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during the Derek years. Update 3. It's been a few months since all this went down, and I'm still reading your comments and messages. Thank you for helping me see that I wasn't crazy for feeling used and disrespected. Many have asked what happened when I ran into Derek again. Our city isn't that big. Well, that happened last week at Target, of all places. Was I prepared? Did he try to win me back? And what did I learn from those 5 years that weren't a complete waste after all? I ran into Derek about 6 months after I moved out. It was at this brewery downtown. I was there with coworkers celebrating a successful product launch, and he walked in with what I assumed was his new girlfriend. Our eyes met across the room, and for a second, nobody moved. He looked different, tired. The designer clothes he used to wear had been replaced with something off the rack from Kohl's. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's where most of my wardrobe comes from, but for status-conscious Derek, it was telling. He approached my table alone, hovering awkwardly while my coworkers suddenly became very interested in their phones. "You look good," he said, and I could tell he meant it. "Thanks," I replied. "How's the new job?" He shrugged. "It's fine. Hard to make the loan payments, but I'm figuring it out." There was an uncomfortable pause. What do you say to someone who defined 5 years of your life but turned out to be a stranger? "I'm sorry," he finally said, so quietly I almost didn't hear him over the brewery noise. "What I said at graduation, that wasn't right. You deserved better." I nodded, accepting the apology without absolving him. "Yes, I did." Another pause. He seemed to be waiting for more. Forgiveness, maybe? Or a sign that there was still a chance. But that ship had sailed, hit an iceberg, and sunk to the bottom of the ocean. "Well," he said finally, "take care of yourself." "Always do," I replied, and meant it. As I watched him walk back to his date, I felt nothing but a vague sense of relief. No anger, no regret, just gratitude that I'd found my backbone before we'd made anything official with rings or mortgages. Or, God forbid, kids. Those 5 years weren't a complete waste. I learned what I'm capable of, both in terms of how hard I can work and how much respect I deserve. I learned to trust my gut when it tells me something's off. And most importantly, I learned that being alone is way better than being with someone who doesn't value you. These days, my life isn't perfect, but it's mine. I've started taking classes toward a certification that'll help me advance even further in my career. My little studio apartment is feeling more like home every day. I even adopted a cat from the shelter, something Derek always vetoed because he claimed to be allergic. He wasn't. He just didn't like animals. Sometimes when I'm curled up on my couch with my cat, Vinny, watching whatever I want on Netflix, instead of another documentary about tech entrepreneurs, I think about that alternate reality where I never overheard Derek's comment. Where I might still be working myself to exhaustion for someone who saw me as nothing more than convenient support staff with occasional perks. And then I scratch Vinny behind the ears, take a sip of my wine, and smile. Because the universe sometimes throws you a bone in the strangest ways. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best decisions. And sometimes finding out exactly who someone is, even when it hurts like hell, is the greatest gift they can give you.